Hello and welcome to TransbyDef. My name is Morgan Fay, and this week's topic is sexual attraction through transition. So what we're talking about is how one's sexual attraction, who their preferred person type, gender, whatever, changes as you transition. Obviously for some there's not going to be a change, but for myself, like there is for a lot of other people, there is definitely change as well as clarity that comes. As I discussed in some of my previous topics, there was a change in my sexual orientation. Prior to transition, I was attracted exclusively to females. Now, while I'm still attracted primarily to feminine traits, my attraction is more open. I'm definitely more open to different possibilities. But what I have found out is that the types I was attracted to haven't changed, but I did get some clarity on those. Prior to transition, I was attracted to two types. One was a more tomboy, more strong women, and the other type was softer, sweeter, cuter, generally with a kind of a mischievous side. And I've discovered that the first type was my actual attraction. That's who I'm actually attracted to. While that second type was actually an envy attraction. It's more who I wanted to be. Which is kind of interesting because I didn't actually expect myself to wind up that way. I expected myself to wind up more butch, and that's definitely not how it turned out. So that second type of attraction, that second type I had, was actually what I desired to be for myself rather than who I desired to be with. So in addition to that, prior to transition, I had gaydar, and it always interfered with my relationships because I was primarily attracted to those who were not straight, which could definitely make it difficult when you're presenting as a heterosexual male. Now everything kind of fits. My attraction to a stronger, more tomboy kind of feminine characteristics makes more sense to me. It's more compatible with my personality as it is now, rather than it being kind of it would kind of butt heads a little bit more before. Now it's much more complementary to my personality. So I've definitely gained some clarity as I've transitioned on who I'm attracted to and why. As far as the change in orientation, I think there's a question of whether or not it's a new change or was an underlying thing that was already there that just got kind of uncovered as you transition. And I'm leaning towards kind of an underlining effect that was discovered because once I went on to testosterone blockers, that kind of more physical, demanding sexual drive, went away completely. And what it left me with was more my core sexual drive, which is a more emotional attraction. And I think that's what caused the change in orientation. Not so much that the orientation changed, but just that because the emotional attraction has become dominant, it's just opened me up to more possibilities. Now, one of the interesting things that I found is that the question of my orientation actually rarely comes up. When I came out to my family, when I came out to my friends and stuff like that, they actually never considered that my orientation would change. And even if it had, even when I did, kind of express to my family and stuff like that, I lie a little closer to pansexual now than I ever expected to be. It's kind of almost like a non-issue. The fact that I'm trans and that I'm transitioning overshadows everything when it comes to sexual orientation. It's anything else that might have been, controversial, or it would have, caused an uproar or been scandalous, or even just curiosity it's just enveloped into the transition, and it's not really considered to be a big deal at all. Now, for my marriage, it's definitely had a bit of concern because as I began to transition and as my orientation and my preferences began to change or become more in focus, my wife was definitely concerned that this would leave me no longer attracted to her, no longer interested in her as a person. And what it's actually turned out to be is that I've discovered that my wife is like the perfect person for me. Um, and it's kind of surreal that I was able to find her for who I was as a person, as my true self. Before I even really knew my true self, before I transitioned, I was still able to find that perfect mate. So it's been kind of an uplifting story for myself and for my friends and for my family, that it our love, our relationship is something that was kind of destined to be. If you believe in that, it definitely makes me think about that kind of connection, that there might be something to it. Because when I first met her, the first moments I started to interact with her, I knew that we were right for each other, even when we weren't right for each other at that particular moment. And she felt the same way, and we always try to figure out how to make it work until this. And now all the pieces are beginning to fall into place. And now that I've begun to transition, and that I can see that and I can get some clarity on it, our relationship makes a lot more sense. So once we got past that initial concern that my orientation or my preferences might change so that it would disclude her, we've definitely found some more stability and security now, and that we are definitely meant to be together. Um, and it's very reassuring to know that my wife is my type. It is the type person I'm attracted to, not the type of person I want it to be. So it makes our relationship real rather than something that probably would not have survived transition. So a lot of this was had to be done with soul searching, and it's kind of a theoretical internal issue because I am married, so it's not like it's something I can experiment with or something that I would want to gain experience with outside of a relationship. I wouldn't want to do anything that would jeopardize that emotional bond that we have. So everything is a very theoretical, very, very introspective way to try to figure out who I am. And I know the need to know for me was something that also raised some concerns with my wife, that it might drive me to experiment outside of our marriage. But the need to know isn't the desire for experience. The need to know is because who I am is been someone that has been comatose and locked away since I was 7 years old. Um, you know, I never really got to know who I am, and I'm just now discovering, and that's an important piece of any person's identity. So needing to know exactly where my orientation, where my preferences lie, and how that works for me is something that is very important for me to understand myself. So I think that about covers how my sexual attraction, my preferences, and my orientation changed as I began to transition. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down in the comments section. Other than that, this will be the close of this topic. I hope to see you next week here on TransbyDef.